22 minutes after 2. I think we're talking to Just Stop Oil shortly as well. They've been staging their biggest ever slow march protest, 200, targeting 14 locations. We'll chat to one of their voices in a few moments. Let me get a word from Ben Pyle. Afternoon to you, Ben. I know you heard what Dale Vince was just saying. He was talking about 60,000 dead last year as a result of the temperatures. The highest temperatures in, I think he said, 120,000 years. Although I notice it's actually quite windy and we got none of that malarkey around here at the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
However, maybe that's just an inconvenience to the debate. Who knows? But what do you make of it? I mean, Dale is not alone in offering up this voice that we've got a big problem on our hands, and if we don't sort it, we're all going to die.
Yeah, well, it's quite difficult to take on sort of a machine gun approach to these kind of debates in 5 or 10 minutes, which I'm sure all the time we have. I don't put much faith in estimates like the 61,000 deaths caused by the last year's summer. And even if we could put any confidence in those kind of estimates, they certainly don't have a historical perspective. And we know, for example, that heat waves in the UK a century ago would have, in a town like Nottingham or a city like Nottingham, would have killed several hundred children over the course of the heat wave, mostly because of a lack of refrigeration. So spoiled food, which people couldn't afford to throw away, would cause food poisoning. And similarly, through cities before the age of air conditioning, cities like New York, there'd be huge numbers of people who lose their lives because of heat stroke and so on and so forth. And the same through London. If you check, go back through the books, through the statistics, heat waves used to be a very major cause of death, partly also because people were much frailer. So what this study does, this 61,000 estimate, 61,000, it looks at the whole of Europe, which has to be remembered is a huge population, 500 million or so people, and then tries to attribute the number of people that died, or some proportion of the number of people that died, to that hot weather. But they will be like as we learned throughout the COVID pandemic. These estimates don't properly account for people with comorbidities. They're typically people well into their 80s. They've probably got lung and heart disease as well, which increases the impact.
So people aren't, because when you see the headline that 60,000 people have died, without the detail and the context, as you rightly say, Ben, it's very difficult to make a real intelligent assessment. We have what we know we haven't got is that people who are suddenly going for a swim on the beach in Malaga, who are just dropping like flies miraculously. It isn't that, so it's obviously something else. And you mentioned, obviously, yes, if you are older and vulnerable, you are more susceptible to a hotter summer or a colder winter. That's never really changed.
That's right. And in the UK, for example, a very cold winter before COVID, which has just thrown all the statistics into haywire, you may see 50 or 60,000 excess winter deaths, and that's that might be because of flu. But that's in general because we don't properly look after vulnerable people. In historical sense, we do. In a historical sense, if you compare again with the 19th century, we look after people far, far, far better than we used to. But these heat waves come and go, and more or less people suffer from that. It's not like in spring. But the greatest killer for people throughout the continent is cold. Cold kills about 10 times as many people as heat, and this is why we see a lot of interest from green organisations who want to use what seems to be extreme and unprecedented temperatures as a sort of talking point to sort of make their political claims. But the answer to the problem of a cold winter is the same as the answer to a hot summer, and that's to have more abundant and affordable energy, which we turn into heat in the winter, and which we turn into air conditioning cool air in the summer, so that anyone who is vulnerable is able to afford to keep themselves cooler. That's what it should be standard in hospitals. It should be standard in healthcare facilities, especially for the elderly. And maybe it should be something that we provide to people in their homes when they're older, to keep, so that they can keep their independence. But we don't think in that way. We sort of seem to think that the better way to produce those benefits is to change the weather, which is completely upside down in my view. So I'm not buying their alarm and their panic, and I think we need to take a much more sceptical view of the kind of the constant sort of panic that we hear now that often disappears. We hear claims that this is an unprecedented temperature in such and such a place, but actually, it turns out a few days later that temperature isn't unprecedented. I think people were complaining about Athens just having reached the hottest temperature ever recorded, and then somebody has produced a newspaper article on Twitter today from 1977, which shows it was 2 or 3 degrees warmer in July that year. But so all of this kind of panic and the desire to feed the political agenda with these stories, I think overwhelms many newsrooms, of course some accepted, many newsrooms sort of caution, should we say, and their need to put things into perspective.
Yeah, well, this debate isn't over. Well, all I can say, Ben, is have a lovely summer wherever you are, and I hope it's not too hot. That's Ben Pyle, co-founder of Climate Debate UK, with us here on Talk TV. Dovetailing into this, just stop.